Welcome to Encounter Grace, where we help thinking Christians think clearly. I'm Jason McKnight, and I'm so glad you're with us. We have a great podcast today, a conversation with the creators of one of the fastest growing and most effective podcasts for children in their discipleship. It's called Tiny Theologians, if you haven't heard of it. Creator Amy Gannett and musical creator Kent Henderson are joining us to talk all things Tiny Theologians. Now, who are Amy and Kent? Well, Amy is a writer and a theologian and a church planter with a great gift for bringing theological depth and real insights to the everyday rhythms of discipleship. She's the author of Fix Your Eyes, How Our Theology Shapes Our Worship, which has been out for several years and is an excellent book. And in addition to Tiny Theologians, she creates all sorts of content to help discipleship at young ages and old ages. And then when she's not writing or creating this kind of stuff, she is doing life in ministry with her husband, Austin, and their family as they have planted a church in Greenville, North Carolina, called Trinity Church Greenville, and we love Trinity Church. Kent, the musical creator of Tiny Theologians, Kent Henderson, has been the associate pastor at Grace Fellowship here in Kinston for over 25 years, faithfully leading worship, missions, and every other corner you can imagine. If you don't know what's going on, ask Kent. He knows what's going on. He is extremely creative, extremely organized, extremely excellence-oriented, and he loves a good laugh and a bad pun, I just got to tell you. But he and his wife Mary have made a life here in Kinston and blessed our community. So Kent and Amy, listen, we thank you so much for joining us. So let's get right to it. Let's start talking. Welcome to the show.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah.
Well, I want to start with you, Amy, as all of Tiny Theologians, and then we'll get to the music part, and then we'll go back to both of you and banter a little bit. Explain for someone who doesn't know, Amy, if you would, just what is the Tiny Theologians podcast in 2 or 3 sentences?
Yeah, the Tiny Theologians podcast seeks to take kids on adventures so that they can learn about God as they follow along with brother and sister duo TJ and Tori. We want to do the opposite of just talking at kids. We actually wanted to create an adventure podcast that would bring kids into this imaginary world that we've created, a neighborhood where they get to explore and where most importantly they learn about God. And Kent gets to write my favorite character, Mr. Trueman, the town troubadour, who always seems to have just the right ditty for whatever the kids are learning about each episode.
I mean, it's really true. The number of, well, we'll get to the music in a second. I just love it, though. It's amazing. And I love the way you said that, how we're not just talking at kids, but we're helping them explore. And what I have loved, now I've not listened to all of them, but I've listened to a whole bunch of them. I love how the kids have an aha moment. The kids get to discover it for themselves. Amy, that's just a real gift. Where did this whole idea come from? To do a radio show, a radio theater about kids and family and music, about God's character and God's invitation to us to live with him and for him.
Well, I had been approached about doing a kids podcast, I would say 6 years ago is when people started approaching Tiny Theologians about doing a podcast, and all of them were for parents. They were raising Tiny Theologian style podcasts, and I'm a mom of young kids, so I am not about to give anybody parenting advice. So that seemed like just something that was a very easy no. And the more the idea sort of percolated, those asks did sort of plant something in the back of my brain. Would it be interesting to do a podcast? I love to create, I love to write, but I had never created for audio, so that would be a new challenge, and I love a new challenge. So it sort of planted a seed that as I sort of percolated on that idea, a lot of kids podcasts were popping up, and it felt like that need might be met, but all of them were telling podcasts. They were talking to kids, like, now let's talk about the fruit of the Spirit. Here's what it is. And that's a great thing. And we want shows like that to exist. But what I realized didn't exist was something that was bringing kids into this imaginary world. And I wanted, the phrase that kept sticking with me is an adventure podcast. I wanted to create an adventure podcast for kids all about God's world. And so we decided to take some of our well-tested material. We have our best-selling cards, our ABCs of God's attributes. And so we decided to take that content and put it into a show. And I thought, we'll do the alphabet once and we'll just make it evergreen content, and people can listen through the alphabet more than one time if they enjoy it. And then we'll just be done. We'll do A through Z and be done. Well, lo and behold, we just finished writing our third time through the alphabet because it has been just so much fun. And there's so much more that we want to bring, so many more adventures for kids to go on as they learn about God.
I mean, 3 times through Z.
That's right. I mean, tell me about it. 3 times through Q. That was the tough one, but yes, 3 times through the alphabet.
Man, tell us just tell us who the characters are and what's kind of the narrative world or the imaginative world that we're in.
Yeah, so every episode follows a different letter of the alphabet. So our first season was all about God's attributes. So A is for all-knowing, and then our second time through the alphabet was for the ABCs of the names of God. So A is for Abba. You can see how each letter focuses on a different attribute or name of God. In seasons 5 and 6, we'll follow the ABCs of theology, so theological concepts. But each episode follows TJ and Tori. Tori, who is supposedly somewhere around first grade. We don't say ages because we want kids to see themselves in these characters, no matter what grade our listeners are. So Tori comes home on the school bus every day and is met by her brother, presumably preschool age, TJ, who's waiting for her in the driveway. And whether it's something that Tori's encountered at school, a question that she has, or something that TJ's been playing with while he's home and he has a question, something prompts a big God-sized question, and their parents regularly invite them to go on adventures to find the answer. And so instead of just giving them the answer, like so many of us parents are tempted to do, a kid asks a question about God and we feel like here's our chance, we sit them down for a lecture. A good message to myself is to resist doing that and encourage them to explore that question, to ask big questions, because God can hold up to our biggest questions. And so they send them on an adventure through their neighborhood. And so we've written characters into this neighborhood from Mr. and Mrs. Wiseman, who are the next door neighbors who are in their 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Then we've got Mr. Reed, the neighborhood dog walker, Miss D. Livery, the mail carrier, Miss Libby, the librarian, Mr. Trueman, the town troubadour, Coach Faith, who is the school's PE teacher, Farmer Caroline, who owns the local farm. We have all these characters, and though they don't all appear in every episode, one of the parents or both of the parents always appear alongside TJ and Tori. And then these characters sort of give them a piece to the puzzle every episode until the end, when they sort of are able to bring it all together and share what they've learned about God.
I love it. I really think there could be room for a Canadian hockey player somewhere in this town.
There could be. I mean, H was for holy, and they did go to a hockey game. So we
Holy
really could
hockey.
write in the Canadian.
Probably in the penalty box. I don't know. So that's all in your mind. How did it go to be in reality? How did you make this podcast?
I wish I could say that we had this really slick process in mind when we started, but we didn't. I decided to start by drafting 4 scripts. We wrote A through D, and then we kind of wanted all of the voice actors in the same room, and we tried reading the scripts. And even though that's the way, we didn't end up recording that way. We ended up recording an entirely different model, but it was really great to get the feel of the script. How do these things come together? And, what we do now is I write the scripts, Kent writes the music. And so I'm always putting in the script where the music will fall so that as he's reading the script, he knows about when that song should be. And I make lyric suggestions and he makes them way better in the end. So he goes and writes the music for them. But Kent plays the voices of all of our male characters, and then we have a female voice actor who plays the voice of all the female characters, and then I sit with the kids and read to them. So our kids are reading age, but you know how when kids read, you can tell they're like sounding out the words and it doesn't feel very live. And so what we do is we all send our lines individually. I sit with the kids and I do what we call reflective reading. So I'll read a line and show them how I want my voice to sound. And then they, repeat back, that's how I want my voice to sound. Like they repeat it back, just inflection for inflection. And then we send it to our amazing podcast editing team, the Good Podcast Co. And they put in the sound effects and they put the scripts together. But right now what we do is I will write 2 seasons at a time, A through Z. And then Kent will record his male lines. I'll record the mom lines. My husband does the dad lines. I'll sit with TJ and Tori and record over a couple of days. It takes usually 2 full work days, like 2 8-hour days of working with these kids to get that done for 2 seasons. But then we send it off, and it's fun to hear how the episodes come out in the end.
Yeah, that's really cool. I never thought of that. I remember when y'all would be in one room and because kind of looking in the window, wishing I was on the show, but it was really fun to see all that. But to think that it's all pieced together, and that's amazing. Now, how did you come up with working with Kent? Because for the music, that's a huge deal. You had to get the right person.
Well, I really can take this the right way. Okay, are you ready?
You didn't know anybody else.
Right. No. It was less important to me that somebody could produce music, that somebody could, had like immaculate vocals. Like that was actually less important to me. Of course, we wanted somebody who can sing, which Kent obviously can, but I wanted somebody who knew kids and who could be a little funny and who was comfortable being goofy, because when you record with kids, if you're too cool to be silly with kids, it's not going to work. Kids know that. They can smell it a mile away, and they get uncomfortable because you're uncomfortable. We could not have that. And so Kent, having raised a bunch of kids, being somebody who's, cracking jokes, and who I really could sense that if he got in a room with kids, he was going to make those kids feel comfortable, not uncomfortable. A lot of musicians actually have the opposite effect.
It's true.
They can be really slick. They can be
self-conscious.
Really self-conscious. That's a good word. And so I really wanted somebody who could do the music stuff, but also who knew kids and could be comfortable with kids and make kids feel comfortable, because that's this character. This character in the show, Mr. Trueman, is inviting kids to ask big questions, be comfortable, dialoguing about God, which a lot of kids are uncomfortable talking about God. A lot of kids are uncomfortable asking adults these big questions that they have about what does it mean to be saved, who is a Christian, all of these things. And so we needed somebody who just in their embodiment of grace would sort of have that posture towards kids. And Kent was the first person to come to mind.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Kent is very comfortable in his own skin, and he makes kids come alive. Like, I've watched that for 20 years working with him. But also, I happen to live in the same neighborhood as him, and my wife and I were on a walk about 2 weeks ago, and Kent and Mary came along on the other side, and we were talking to some neighbors and the kids were awestruck that Mr. Trueman was walking down the street.
I know.
He's a minor celebrity in our neck of the woods.
Did you not know you live in a celebrity neighborhood, Jason? You do. Mr. Trueman's right down the road.
No.
He is always wearing sunglasses now in our neighborhood.
That's right. Can't go anywhere in my tiny town.
Well, Kent, let's talk a bit about the music, because there's no doubt that the story arc and the family and the adventures and everything, it is awesome, and it's 5 times as awesome because there's music that kids can sing over and over again, and the truth is going into their hearts and their minds through their ears and their voices. I love this. And to think that you're figuring out how to communicate God's attributes, or the ABCs of theology, in ways that are catchy, melodious, accurate. We're not fudging anything. How do you do it? I mean, let's talk the music.
Yeah, and when Amy asked me about that, she cast that vision that you just summarized, and I got so excited. I was like, that actually does sound like me. I'm not your traditional, like, super serious worship leader, but I care that kids learn truth. I care that we all have truth on our lips when we sing, whether it's in church or children's ministry and so on. And you cast that vision, it's like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. And I never really thought of myself as a musical writer, writing worship songs. Done a little bit, but that just didn't feel like my lane. I feel like other people do that really well. But this thing on a kid's level, bite size, or understanding a larger concept in a way that's accessible, I was like, oh, that really sounds fun and intriguing. And I've loved working with kids over the years. So that idea of how do you get it from a concept to a real finished song has been fun. And I really had no idea what I was doing, but we went with it anyway. But some of the prompts that Amy would give in the script were really helpful. So honestly, the first thing I love to do is just read the script and go, where's the story going? They're obviously building toward kind of a reveal of whatever this, what is the attribute of God if that was the one, or where are we going to discover it? Well, it's not this, it's not that, it's not like me, God's different. If it was, one of those attributes that's unique to him. And discovering that was a lot of fun. And then go, okay, really practically speaking, she will give me some great prompts, and I'll usually use those in terms of here's a line, or we're making sure we get the words in there. They have to be the actual word, making sure the biblical words are locked in tight. But then the other part is, just making sure some of the things that, what do you want kids, why would a kid be singing the song or remembering it? What locks it in? Because we can all think of songs when we were little, and some of them are just silly. But for the advertiser, we all remember whatever it was, Oscar Mayer, or Toys R Us kid. Everybody wanted to be one, and we remember the little tune. So some of those things, like alliteration for sure, and even if you notice when she was listing off the characters, a lot of them, it's Trueman the troubadour and Wiseman. Well, that kind of describes the character. The alliteration is important because obviously being an alphabetized series, that's a big deal. So I would actually go online and look at words that start with L, 2-syllable, 3-syllable, 4-syllable. So kind of like whatever they call that, it's not a thesaurus, but I go, oh, that's a fun word. And then what are words kids relate to? Some of them were like, oh, it'd be fun to talk about. So like, he's the bread of life. Well, if we're going to talk about food, you got all kinds of opportunities. Oh, let's talk about the other kinds of food. Or living water was the L, so he's the living water. Well, nothing else satisfies, so I can drink lemonade and lime juice and a lot of other things, but nothing satisfies like the living water. And so you have fun playing with that. Some are a little more content heavy, the songs, where we're really putting in Trinity, so you need to describe the attributes of the Father and the Son and the Spirit. That's important.
And others are a little union, that's the H.
Yeah.
That's right. Hypostatic union. That's right. Hapex legomena, that was the other H the first time. And so, we did zealous. How many words can you think of aren't called jealous that rhymes with zealous? Not many. But you know what does? Fellas. All you girls and all you fellas. I was like, So it's fun. I'm like, here's in the middle of the night going, I wonder what, jot that down. My phone's full of little ideas, little word ideas, or little tune ideas I'm humming. To come back to, which is, it's a lot of fun. It was really helpful to get the creative juices going. Learned a lot about the recording process too, which I know very little about, but to get that from just a really raw, and the idea is he's a troubadour, so it's raw on the street. So some of them are very simple. It's just a guitar and a vocal, maybe a little shaker in the back. One of them has maracas, and that's even, some of the episodes you include instruments. Like I think you included mandolin. The kazoo. Yes, so I play kazoo. We hired a special mandolin player in-house. I know a guy. The maracas. So it's like, well, I guess we're learning to do maracas, which is a lot of fun. Has a little Latin flair to it. Yeah. And so the styles, changing them up is a lot of fun. And you're learning as you go and layering in those. And I love harmonies, so I add a little background. And some of the ones we use kids to sing on, some we didn't. But the idea is you want it to be catchy, you want it to be fun, but you want it to stick. So, finding little melodies. Most of them are original, except maybe 3 or 4. There's public domain songs that you're allowed to use copyright free. So like we used
Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Twinkle, Frere Jacques for another one. And one other, I can't remember, but it was something that's, it's an old early American folk tune that we repurposed that I remembered as a kid. But anyway, Mama's Little Baby Loves Shortening. That's an old school one. Our grandmas might know that. But just repurposing some of those ones that are familiar. But it's been a lot of fun.
So when you're deciding, like, how do you decide which style to do it in? Any given song, like they're not all the same style,
right?
How do you keep guardrails on what rhymes you will use or won't use, or like how do you keep it from getting crazy or silly beyond what a troubadour would do? Because you want the kids singing it and you don't want them embarrassed of it later, kind of thing. Like what's your guardrails and what's your prompt forward and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have
just
a
feel it.
super great framework thought. Yeah, except I like variety. So some of them are going to sound like a little country two-step. Some are going to sound like a little pop song. Some are going to sound more nursery rhymish. Some might be a little more mature, a little more rockish. So I don't know that I have like it's got to check all these boxes, but certainly repetition in terms of the lyrics, words that kids can relate to, elements of the story and the theology, musical style. It can vary. We did one that was actually more of a big band style for the word yes. So God's answer to all His promises are yes in Christ Jesus. And so that was fun. So you put some little horns in there and give it kind of the big band swing. So that's a little different. And then we did one. All right, so maybe we can play a clip for this one. This was the vine. So there's lots of, I guess I use this as an example because there's good repetition in there. And in some ways it's simple. But I ventured way out of my comfort zone. And I probably shouldn't have done this. I didn't ask you this, Amy. I was just like, here it is. If she hears it and says, if she says I'm not a fan, we'll redo it. But so this one has a little rap in it, if I can say that. But in kind of a corny way, like I'm not trying hard to be a cool rapper. Like it's kind of cheesy, and it's like if you know you're being cheesy, but it's fun, that works. But if you think you're like the cool dad and you're just way too old to be hanging out with the teenagers, acting like you're one of them, it's embarrassing.
Cringy.
So I think knowing where that line is, knowing I get that I'm playing kind of a goofball here, then you kind of invite people into, if they're in on the silliness of it, as opposed to this guy's my kids would say, you're trying too hard. So I think you got to know you're not trying too hard to be something that's not working. And so hopefully that's the case. Probably didn't get it every time, but maybe we can play a little clip of that, guys. Do y'all have that pulled up? The Vine. Yeah. And you may hear elements of some 90s rap style in there.
Let's hit it, Will.
He's the vine, 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 and I'm the branch, branch, branch. There's life, 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 when I'm attached, attached, attached. He's the vine, oh, he's the vine. This vine is very vital to my very survival. And when it comes to giving life, this vine has no rival. His power makes us grow and bear good fruit to show. And when I stay connected, oh, his power in me flows. Vine, vine, vine. And I'm the
Is that you doing the backgrounds as well?
It is. It is.
Because I don't remember being called in on that one.
You weren't.
So I mostly play all the little digital instruments, but we had a couple of friends help here and there. So we're having fun with it.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Kent. Tell us a little bit about Trueman as a character, as you've kind of walked with him for 4 seasons now, and you're looking, you're looking ahead. What have you? I mean, I don't even know how to say it. Like, I mean, I know he's your
what I think about
creation,
Trueman,
but and how have you?
So honestly, for me, Trueman is just me. It really is me. I'm thinking of myself like a dad or like somebody who's hanging around kids at church going, hey, let's learn. I'm in children's church. I'm in Sunday school. But you just happen to be in these settings, around the town and with TJ and Tori or the friend or in whatever setting it is. And it's fun because Amy will put us in different settings. Maybe there's a festival at the park and we're singing the song. Or one time we play, is it TJ? I think we've got him playing the xylophone, but let's learn this song together while we do it because it teaches about it might be the exalted one or whatever the episode is. And so, I mean, I really think of Trueman as just me doing what he does, which is what we all want to do with kids, is helping them in their discipleship journey, or in this case, discovery, adventure. Hey, he's got kind of a teacher's and fun uncle kind of vibe to him. But so in a sense, I'm not really acting. I'm just being like, I like that. Like that's how I think about when I'm around kids, grade school kids and preschool kids. It's, hey guys, let's learn together. Let's make it fun. Let's bring energy. This is the VBS mode a little bit. So that's how I think about it. I mean, the other characters are really different, but Trueman's my voice, so it's just me. Mr. Wiseman, like you said, is an older guy. I asked Amy when we first started, I was like, I'm trying to come up with a voice for these guys. So in my mind, Mr. Wiseman, he's Matthew McConaughey if he was like 82.
In his retirement.
I'm just saying. I was like, are you good with it? Is that okay? Is that going to be all right, all right, all right? Because we can learn about Jesus. And you got to whistle the S's. So that's Mr. Wiseman. And then Mr. Reed, he's like, actually, we experimented because I was like, what if he's like this kind of big guy who kind of rolls around, he's got all these dogs. She was like, and so I had this kind of voice like this, and Mr. Reed, come on, guys. And she was like, it might be scary to 3-year-olds. I was like, that I didn't even think of that. That's true. So we went with kind of a little more of like, he's kind of a nasally, nerdy. He's high strung, but he's got those dogs, and he's always going. And so, you know, you just play it.
Eugene Meltzner from
That's right, Adventures in Odyssey. Very much Eugene.
A little nerdy.
A little nerdy, a little high strung.
I was thinking of Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters, but anyway.
There you go.
Fair.
Every ensemble cast. Good. So that's fun, but she's written some fun characters to just kind of dive into. So it's been a blast.
Well, let me return to the concept of how do we talk about who God is in these huge things. I mean, we're coming up on the 1700-year anniversary of the Nicene, or the Council of Nicaea. So Nicene, and I've been reading about that, thinking about teaching about it later in the summer, and I'm like, basically, you're taking Nicene theology and bringing it to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-year-olds. Like, how do you bridge that gap? Because we've all, like you've said, on the one hand, Amy, you've said people talk to kids instead of we're talking with them, and but also people dumb down. And I think one of the hallmarks of Tiny Theologians, the podcast and the ministry, is that you don't dumb things down, but you tackle big things. How do you do that? And how can we as parents and Bible teachers anywhere, how can we take steps to grow in that?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most overlooked aspects of theology and of God's character is his simplicity. I think a lot of times, we can dive into all these different attributes of God, which are we can endlessly explore God's attributes, his all-knowing nature, his omnipotence, his omnipresence. All of his attributes are so awe-inspiring, but he is also simple. And I think I really rest at the end of the day on the fact that Jesus said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them. What he didn't say is pave a path, make the way for them to come to me. You've got to clear the way. He said, let them come, just don't hinder them. And that's what we want to do. We want to state the simple things that are true about God in a way that kids can understand. So we may not use omnipotent, but we will tell kids that God is all powerful. And as they grow up, we'll say, a word that theologians use to talk about God's all-powerful nature is omnipotence. We'll train them into that language. But we mostly want to glorify the God who is simple, who has simplicity as one of his attributes, and not prevent kids from coming to him. Just allow them through the questions that kids ask to get to know the God of the Bible. One of the things that I am constantly reminded of is that sometimes in our adult minds, theological minds, I've been through Bible school and seminary, and so I've spent some real time in some of these doctrines. The doctrine of union with Christ is probably my favorite. If I'm allowed to have a favorite, it's probably my favorite. So at a certain point, I remember sitting in a professor's office, a professor who taught me a lot about union with Christ, and saying, however will I help other people understand this doctrine? It was so revolutionary when I first encountered it and started learning about it, that I thought, surely I have not understood salvation until now. It just was it felt that big in my theological understanding. Now, of course, I had understood salvation. I just didn't have this new language or this new layer. But I remember he said, well, somebody taught it to you. How did you understand it? It's like somebody just explained it to you. And it just sort of debunked in that moment this myth that some people have it and some people don't, and there's no bridge in between. Somebody just explained it to me. Somebody said to me at one point, how the New Testament is constantly saying those who are in Christ, if you're in Christ, those who belong to Christ, all of that language is talking about this doctrine called union with Christ, which means that we're saved, not by way of something Jesus gives us, but that he gives us himself in union with us. That is our salvation. we can say that to kids. So I think just remembering that all of us taught something at some point. Somebody explained the gospel to us, and all of us who have come to know the Lord in adulthood, we can look back on our parents now with both humility and honor and honesty and say, my parents didn't have it all together. We can say that with humility without, throwing shame or anything like that. We can say my parents were not perfect, and yet they did explain the gospel to me, and look, God has grown that in my life. And so I think remembering that keeps us on our knees, but also sort of debunks this myth that you have to be super sophisticated in your theology to teach kids. It just reminds us that God actually has outlined the gospel and his nature in simple terms, simple enough for kids to understand if we'll take the chance to teach them in the ways that we've also been taught ourselves.
I love that verse in Philippians 3, I think it's 16, but only let us live up to what we've already attained.
Yeah.
Like there's a hope there. We don't have to know it all, but whatever we've come to,
where we are,
let us live into that. Yeah.
That's good.
That's very well said. I really appreciate that. As you've done this, I mean, you're writing, you guys are writing this stuff and you're studying God's character. Whatever. How is God becoming more fresh to you or more real? Have you seen him with fresh eyes through Tori's eyes, through TJ's eyes, through Trueman's eyes? Like, how has he given more of himself to you even in this creative process?
Well, Kent, I want to hear your answer to the question, but I will say I think I just stand in awe that Jesus saves anyone. Like I have these moments when the kids are learning about the gospel and you just think, what a grace it is that Jesus really does save, and that the gospel really can be heard and believed by little hearts and minds, and by my little heart and my little mind. Like, I mean, the fact that God saves anyone just feels so miraculous to me. And then when we're in the world of TJ and Tori, and we're in the world of our listeners, one of the incredibly miraculous things that I think we get to bear witness to is all the time kids are learning about God, and they're coming to know him personally, and they are mirroring what TJ and Tori are learning. God is using these fictional things that we put on the page to really transform lives. And that just shows me how big God is, because I'm not big. Kent's not big. Tiny Theologians is not big, but God is doing big things in hearts. We could build a really successful podcast. We could monetize it. We could do all these flashy things, but none of us are able to change hearts. None of us are able to actually metabolize truth about who God is in the lives of kids. Only God can do that, and he's doing it. So I just feel like I stand back and just feel like God is so big. It just reminds me that he is just at work in homes, in hearts. As kids listen to this, they really are learning, and that's a jump we can't do for them. Only the Holy Spirit can do that, and he's doing it.
That's so good.
Yeah. To me, it's been really encouraging to think, that the kids who respond, and you get lots of parents who maybe contact or tag you as they're listening, Amy, but say, my kids just love learning with TJ and Tori and following them. And to me, the beauty of it is that you made the children really the main voice of how the gospel is taught, as opposed to Miss Amy or Mr. Kent or the adults. We're the supporters.
That's right.
Which, back to previously, as you're referring to, the simplicity of the gospel, although you'll never fully plumb the depths.
That's right.
But even for me reading through the episode, I don't often enough think about God's beauty. Sure, I think about the cross, and we preach those core parts of the gospel that we never need to stop talking about as we worship, as we teach, as we Bible study, as we preach. But there's all these aspects of God's character that I go, just a simple reminder is so helpful, whether you're a dad or a mom or a 6-year-old kid. And, it reflects, I think, God's word several times. I think of the little girl who, with Naaman and leprosy, and God used, or the little boy who's the lunch of the feeding of the 5,000. You see scenes throughout God's even written word where he used a child to carry his truth, to be his voice. And I think it's so fun to see that happen, because it really takes it off. You got to be some performer, or I know it's well done, it's well produced, and we're thankful and we're learning that. But I think there's a beautiful simplicity in even how it's delivered. The voices that really carry the discovery process, not just the sort of didactic teaching, which we get in different ways.
It's really good. Both of those are great. Let's shift a little bit and talk about how you navigate personally the front end and the back end of the podcast. So the front end, how do you navigate the fear that this won't succeed, or the fear that, is anyone going to listen, and is it worth it to do this, the risk and all this kind of stuff? And maybe I'll direct this a little more to Amy, because you're kind of the entrepreneur out there. And I think there's a lot of people that would love to try a lot of things, but it's fear, apprehension, worry. Is anyone going to, these are real things. How have you handled that? How have you navigated that?
Well, it has been, when we started the podcast, we started it when Tiny Theologians was 6 years old. And so that helped a lot in some ways. In the practicals, I can share about what the Lord did in my heart to help me trust him with something he was calling me to do. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. The Lord called us to it, and we say, yes, Lord, even if you're like, I don't know how it's going to happen or how it's going to be financially feasible, all those things. But one of the practical ways that the Lord worked it out is that Tiny Theologians was an established business. And so we had revenue from our physical products in order to support this. We launched it just to be a ministry. We knew it was going to be an expensive project. But one of the things that we kept hearing from families is that they wanted to disciple their kids, but so many families need a free place to start. Let's be honest, not everybody can buy a $12 card set. Not everybody, you never want somebody to feel like they have to choose between, buying their kid food for their lunchbox or buying a discipleship tool. Like you can disciple your kids right where you are with free stuff. And there's a lot of great free stuff out there. But we wanted to just add to what people are doing to make it accessible and free for kids to learn about God. And so we were established as a brand. We had it in our budget to throw some money at this and see if it would stick. And it has. And so that's been such a blessing, because it's taken it far beyond what we could have imagined. We didn't know what this would be. Again, I thought we'd write A through Z and just be done. I thought it would be just this fun project that we did, sort of like I used to have a blog, like I had a blog for a couple of years, and then you kind of wrap it up and you say, well, that was nice. I kind of thought it was going to be like that. And, maybe someday it will be, but right now we're still living in it and really loving it.
It's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Kent, to say, yes, I'll take on writing an alphabet's worth of songs.
More than once now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but at least at the beginning, you're like, and you didn't know any fear or any apprehensions. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, like, is it going to be, do I know what I'm doing? Is it too corny? Is it catchy? And then, so my view of myself, 30 years of music ministry, I'm not doing false humility. I feel like I have a pretty decent perspective. I'm not trying to be falsely humble or overly puffed up. I'm an average church musician. Like, that's fine. I've had people around me all my life who are, I say, more skilled than I am musically, and I actually love that. I'm comfortable with that. But when you realize I'm going to write something and then I'm going to voice it and I'm going to put it to music and I'm going to put it out there, there's a good chance there are a lot of musicians who are parents, who are Christians, who are going, really? That's what you're like? That's a fear, because it's art, and when you put it out there, other artists, there's an old joke that musicians go to other people's concerts like this, because like, I could do that, or I could do better, whatever.
Preachers go to other churches like that,
right? So there's a natural. You put art out there, and you're putting yourself. It's a little bit vulnerable, right? But that's okay. It was like, well, I think the Lord's called me to do this. This does feel like something I'm excited and passionate about. And Amy's invitation was very encouraging. And so for me, it was like, well, I think the Lord's in this. This is something that's necessary. And I do feel like I can produce something that has value. And I think about, even the songs that my kids grew up with from a couple different resources, think to old types of recordings they listen to. And it wasn't that I was listening and going, oh man, it's the best produced thing. It's so slick. You know, it's the highest quality Nashville writing. But it stuck in their heads. And, you know, now with a 21-year-old down to a 16-year-old, they have truth stuck in their head from, you know, whether it's Donut Man or something. And it wasn't like, he's such a great musician, but it's like, man, he knew how to lock truth in a kid's heart in a way, and that's the goal. So it can't, if it's about me, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. Like that's a heart problem, and it's certainly going to affect what you're doing, not in a good way. If you've got that self-conscious sort of fear leading the way. So you just kind of swallow that, but then also be honest, hey, does this work? Is this awkward? Is this catchy? And I'll have a couple who I bounce it off, including Amy, or tell me if I'm missing something. So you got to be open to correction, redirection, constructive feedback, but to not let it hold you back, I think has been so fun to have that freedom too, to go, hey, it's in the Lord's hands. We feel like we're offering a wholehearted, offering here content-wise. We're all in for it.
Ken, I didn't know that part of the process for you, so it's fun for me to hear that. But you should hear me say that part of the affirmation process that said, okay, we are going to launch this, was you saying yes, because I one of my values in this ministry is, in a sense, smallness. Like that's probably not quite the right word for it. But what I don't want is to go get some popular musician to be a
Tomlin
part of
said
this.
No, you can say it. No,
Tomlin turned me down, and so you were my next phone call. No, but I wanted this project to be, I wanted my hands on every piece of it, because I had this vision in my head of what I wanted it to be in the end. And so I wanted my hands in the editing, in the music, in the voice acting, in the script writing. Like I wanted to be a part of every piece until this vision sort of like came to life. Because at the beginning, I couldn't say, here, listen to this demo. We had to record the demo.
Right.
Like for me to pitch it to you guys, we had to record letter A and see what that felt like and sounded like. So I really wanted to be very heavily involved, which meant I only wanted to do it with my folks. Like I wanted to do it with people that I could call up, that I could text, that I could say, hey, let's meet in Kinston. Let's do this in person. Like I wanted to do it in a way that felt so local and so close to me, with people that I knew. And that's part of what, when you said yes, when Amy said yes, and when Amy is, on your worship team occasionally, goes to Grace. Her husband is running the sound on our recording right now. She was in our small group when we lived in Kinston. And then when she said, I have these kids and I'll send you some recordings of them running lines, when that came together, I was like, okay, that felt like the thing that we could create. And we started running lines initially and sort of playing around with it. You shared our process with finding the different voices and discovering the different characters. But then I remember when we got letter A, it was sort of like everybody was contributing a different ingredient to the cake, and then you kind of mix it all up, and then you're like, what's coming out of the oven? Like, we just weren't sure, like, will this be the thing that's in my brain, or is this thing in my brain just not attainable? And I remember listening to the demo, and Austin and I were sitting in our living room, and I was playing it for him, and we were like, this has some secret sauce to it. Like, this is a thing.
Fun.
And I remember listening to letter A and being like, we're going to go all the way with this, because.
Were you holding your breath going, I think
yeah.
we haven't seen it together, but then.
Yes.
That's encouraging. That's fun.
Because we only had recorded A through D. So we were sort of like, it's fine.
Right.
If it doesn't work, it's fine,
Yeah.
You had only written through song D. Like, I was like, everybody stop, because let's make sure that this thing becomes a real thing that we want it to be. And then I remember sitting in there, and Austin and I kept looking at each other kind of side-eyed, being like, I think it is. I think it was born. Like, I think this thing came together, and it's really something special. So I'm glad you said yes, because that was part of how the Lord affirmed, like, this is gonna happen.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That if he wouldn't have said yes, you would have had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, Lord, are you really calling me to this? But the fact that a friend on the journey, you trusted, you respected, it's like, Lord, you're opening doors. And then when you hear the first few, let's go to the other end, which is, well, not the other end, but where we are now in the process. and how, not battling fear anymore, but how do you battle pride? Because this has become pretty successful. I mean, I'm very excited for the reach that you've had with Tiny Theologians. I mean, it was months and months ago that it was 1 million downloads, and I don't even know what it is now. But how do you? I mean, are you pleased with that? Did you expect that? Is it surprising you? Do you battle with pride? Talk about that.
It totally surprised us. Surprised me. You can answer for yourself. I mean, I was like
I had no
flabbergasted.
expectation. I thought if 5 families in my church hear it, that'd be kind of neat.
That would be really fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
The numbers have blown me out of the water to the point where sometimes I'm like, I think we're approaching 3 million downloads, and you're like, I can't visualize 3 million children listening to this. Like, I can't picture what that's like. So sometimes when I see stats, like I see 1,000 people viewed this video, I'm like, I can picture an auditorium with 1,000 people. I can picture that. I cannot picture 3 million people. So it's just a bizarre thing. Like we're playing in numbers that feel just very unreal at a certain point. But I think I think that the higher the numbers go, the more pause I have. I don't battle pride in the sense of like, this has been so successful. I think my internal reaction is so many kids are listening to this that it feels so important to get it right. Not the sound, not the tech, but the theology, what we're teaching them about God. Jesus himself gave very stern warnings about misleading his children. He said, better to have a millstone tied around your neck and be thrown into the depths than to lead one of my children astray. Now, he was talking about intentionally leading someone away from the Lord, which of course we would never want to do. But I feel very sober-minded every time I see the stats. I just think what we're doing is important, and it's really important to get it right. And so I have a personality where I dabble. So I'm a starter. I like to start lots of things. And so when I started the podcast, it was really exciting for the first 3 seasons, and I had to endurance write the next 3 seasons. But in that space, it's easy for me to be like, that's good enough, But with this project, I do not feel that way. I just really have this burden to comb through it and say, let's make sure we're getting this right. And I would actually rather the show end up in the end being less exciting, less sound effects, less cool, but it be theologically sound and still take kids on an adventure. I want that. But I feel the weight of it, I think, more than anything. Especially because when kids are your fans, it doesn't feel like I don't have 3 million adults listening. So it's not like peers are patting me on the back. Does that make sense? So I think if I had an adult podcast that was wildly successful, I think it would be easy for me to pat myself on the back. But you've got a bunch of kid fans, and so it just doesn't feel the same way. Does that make sense? It doesn't. I'm not tempted to pride in the same way. I feel the holy burden, the pressure of getting it right. So, yeah, Kent, what about you? Do you feel that way?
No, I mean, it's encouraging because you're like, well, it found an audience, which hopefully, I think for all the right reasons, parents want this for their kids. Mm-hmm. And if it connects with kids, you go, oh, good. Hopefully we found a right tone that makes it engaging for kids. I also know kids are fickle. I had a parent say, we used to listen to it. We're listening to other stuff now, and it was great. You're like, yeah, kids are going to. So there was a guy. Do you remember this, Amy, a few weeks ago? A guy reached out to us and said he's a music teacher at a large Christian school, I think Indiana or Ohio or somewhere. And he said, hey, I'm a music teacher, elementary, and do you publish the music for the songs? I'd love to play them and teach them to our kids. Yeah, the chords. And it never occurred to me that would be a thing. And so what you said about, I feel the weight of it, I thought of it differently. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I'm picturing this guy in a classroom or in his chapel going, he's using this as curriculum. Not that we weren't taking it seriously, or I hadn't thought about, but I thought, boy, I went back through the lyrics before I sent them the chord charts because I had to clean them up just to make sure, would I correct anything here, knowing you're going to hand this to a teacher who's literally using it to teach a group of kids. Somehow that hit me different with a different weightiness. It's not, but I think to your point of that responsibility, let's get it right. I don't want to look back at 10 years ago, I wish I'd have been a little more careful in writing that verse or a part of it. Not the musical stuff as much as the lyrics, the truth, the theology.
Mm-hmm.
It strikes me that both of you are responding the way we'd hope you would, but the way the Lord would hope you would, which is with success or worldly success or numerical success, which is wonderful and it's just amazing. It's not pride that it engenders, it's more of the fear of God that it engenders. It's more of a, this really is serious. Let's get this right. Let's not do something wrong. Let's not be a millstone, and that to me means you're going to get it right. unless you abandon
by
that
God's
posture.
grace. I mean, by God's
by God's grace.
That's one of the things that I just feel so carried through this process by. I mean, the Lord has seen us through, in a lot of seasons of my life where, I've been writing this show in many different seasons of my life. I mean, I started writing the next seasons when I was a couple weeks postpartum. I mean, I remember writing season 2 postpartum with a baby, and then hearing them come on. My daughter was listening to them every Monday when they would release and being like, I don't actually remember where this episode goes. I don't have it because it was
Wow.
such a postpartum fog. Now we have people that theologically review it and all that sort of thing. So I wasn't worried about that, but the Lord has just carried us through, He has just been so gracious to produce something, use where we are, what we have to offer in whatever season we are. He has just graciously carried us through. So while I feel that holy burden, I also, because of that, I have really felt Him carry us.
Renews your strength.
He really does.
And waiting on Him. He really does. What's the best parent encouragement or child encouragement that you've received? I mean, do you have kind of one or two that you're like, that just keeps me going? Or maybe what's the most recent?
I don't read reviews. That's like a policy that I have. I don't read reviews of my books. I don't read reviews of my products. But my husband does, and he will bring the good ones, like the noteworthy ones, to me, which is just a very kind thing of him, because negative reviews can get me really riled up. So he just reads those and doesn't read those to me, but he reads me the noteworthy ones. And so he read me one recently from, I think, a 7-year-old wrote the review. So was sitting at the computer typing out this little review, which I just think is so precious to picture. But also how she falls asleep every night listening to the podcast. And I had such a hard time sleeping as a kid. I remember really wrestling with insomnia and nightmares from a really young age. And I used to listen to Bible stories on my cassette tapes, different era. On my cassette tapes, I used to listen to those. And those stories just became so meaningful to me. And so to picture a kid playing this podcast at night as they go to sleep, just what a comforting thing that is. And I just feel so privileged that a child and a child's parents would trust us to be that kind of comfort audio as they're falling asleep. That just really resonated with me.
How about you, Kent?
Well, I don't know a specific one, and you sent me a couple, Amy, saying I haven't read it, but sometimes you'll send me a review, or a parent will comment on Instagram or something. And I think what is really special in the ones I've seen, honestly, the most special ones to me are folks in our church.
Yeah.
When a parent will say, we've been listening, or because those are people we know. Back to the original idea of let's work with people we know. There's a trust there. There's history. There's connection, discipleship, our kids growing up together, that sort of thing. So to me, that's really special because it means I get to minister in a little way to a family that's also called to the local body or somewhere in our area. That being said, a lot of folks we'll never know. Maybe in eternity, we'll meet some of these folks face to face, which is kind of neat. But a parent will maybe post one, hey, we're in the minivan heading to school and we're listening. They'll just take a little shot of the kids in the back and mom and dad up front. And I think, how many things would parents listen to with their kids and be fully confident, this is what we want our kids to hear. You know, I can picture trips we've taken, and we would put in screw tape letters on from Focus on the Family or something, the audio version our kids would listen to, and we all loved it together. One of the ways that we talk about children's ministry at our church is, and student ministry, is we're not the primary disciplers. That's the parents' role if it's a believing home, if it's a Christ-centered home. It's not always the case, but if it is, we are coming alongside mom and or dad and or mom, the adults in the home, to support what you're doing, pointing your child to Christ. And so this is another way you get to do that a little bit remotely. But I just love that image of two parents, or the parent and the kids in the back seats of the minivan, and we're doing this together, and mom and dad are going, yeah, that's right. That's what it means that God is all powerful. You don't have to be afraid, or whatever the episode is, that we just get to come alongside. You're doing great, mom and dad. The fact that you're choosing things like this for your children is beautiful, and we're just cheering you on. And here's a little something that maybe you could take with you.
Yeah.
That's very good. Well, y'all, I know you're busy, but let's land this plane. And Amy, let me ask you, what fun things at Tiny Theologians are you excited about? I mean, we're talking about the podcast. We know there's so many other offerings you have. What kind of new things are you excited about? Either just released or maybe close that it's not bad to talk about. But I love the vision. I love seeing what's next.
Well, I am really excited about seasons 5 and 6 of the podcast, which is all about theology. So the ABCs of theology. We did the podcast, each of the 3 times through the alphabets go through our 3 top sellers: ABCs of God's attributes, ABCs of the names of God, and ABCs of theology. So I'm excited about seasons 5 and 6. We have a new set of ABC cards that are going to be coming out, and they're the ABCs of scripture memory. So I'm really excited about that. It has a short version for preschoolers. So my 5-year-old daughter can memorize the short version, but then it also has a contextual one for a kid who's a little bit older. So I can really picture siblings using these, you know, a parent saying to the little one, memorize the shortened version, and the older one, memorize the contextualized one. So I'm excited about that. These cards, the thing that I like about them is that they have a blurb on each card on the back that tells kids when they might want to call that to mind. You know, why memorize scripture? You know, because God's word, you know, abides in us richly, but also because God's word impacts our everyday life. So when might they want to remember that, you know, God is quick to forgive, or to honor their mother and father, or, you know, all these different scripture memory that we put in there. When might they want to call that to mind? So I think they'll be very practical in that way. We just released a baptism workbook, which I really love. We've used it in our local church to walk kids through the concept of baptism. It's really a baptism readiness workbook for parents and kids to discern believers' baptism together. So it goes through, what is baptism, who is it for, and are you ready? It's like asking the child to reflect on where they're at in their relationship with God. And I think the strength of this resource is that it really prompts conversations between kids and parents, that parents may just not know how to ask the question, how to help their child assess themselves. It's really hard to assess your relationship with God, especially when you're really young. So it sort of brings these conversations to the fore as like a sticking point for parents to kind of get the conversation going. And we're releasing soon a companion to that for communion. So communion readiness guide to help kids understand, what is communion? Who is it for? How does that interplay with baptism? Like which comes first, baptism or communion? And then also are you ready to start taking communion? You know, those will work together so lovely. So I'm really excited about those things that are coming up. We also have a new, I don't want to give away too much, but this summer we're releasing an Armor of God set.
Come on, do it.
That is really fun. It's the first toy we've ever made. So I've never produced a toy. We produced this magnetic toy that I'm really excited about with the Armor of God, and then a wood puzzle that when you lift up each piece of the puzzle, like you might lift up the breastplate of righteousness, it has a verse about how Christ is our righteousness. When you lift up the belt of truth, it has a verse about how Christ is our truth. So I'm excited about that. And then a card set that parents can use to teach their kids through. So that trio I'm really excited about. Not only is it super cute, but it's also really solid and full of good truth for kids.
I hope you used Austin, your husband, as kind of the model for that Armor
Absolutely.
of God figure.
Absolutely, I did. He would love that.
Well, I have an idea. I think y'all should do a VBS. I think
Ooh,
we could have a
okay.
blast with a Tiny Theologians
That's true.
VBS. I'm just
Well,
giving you work now.
Be fun.
I will tell you, I have played around with this idea. The thing that I don't want to do is like all the banners and t-shirts. So often when churches order VBS curriculum, they can order like, do you want 1,200 t-shirts or 5? Like, I don't want to deal with that. But I do have an idea.
License though.
Source, yeah.
Exactly. It has to be outsourced. But the thing that I have put together that I don't know when we would launch this, but I've done the writing on it and I just don't know the packaging for it. But I have put together a curriculum for something that I've started calling Backyard Bible Club. So if a family or families from a church wanted to host in their backyard a mini VBS, a backyard Bible club for 1 week, 4 to 6, or they could do 9 to 11 in the morning and invite their neighbors evangelistically. What would they do? What games would they play? What could they do that's just outside or very budget friendly, that sort of thing? I've written curriculum for that because I really want to see families live on mission, and churches band together to do that. But how cool would it be if each small group in our local churches said, instead of having one big VBS, or maybe in addition to that, each house church, which is what we call our small groups, is going to put on one backyard Bible club and just see what the Lord does evangelistically. So I put that together and we'll see when that sees the light of day.
Well, we'll take 10 of them for our church. I love that idea. I think that's great. It's equipping, not 1,200 t-shirts. I love it. Oh, well, Amy and Kent, thank you guys for joining us today. We are very excited about what God has done through y'all, through the podcast, and then through all these other things. And we just wish you the best.
Thank you so much for chatting with us about it.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Yeah.
Well, and everybody, thank you for joining us. And you can go online and look at everything you can about Tiny Theologians as well as the podcast. And guys, we'll see you when you release the next few episodes in the next season. We can't wait for it. So take care.